You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. Bitcoin is starting to heat up, surging past 45K this morning as these ETF issuers continue with relentless buying pressure. Fidelity goes all in on their Bitcoin ETF, adding a 1 to 3% position in their all-in-one fund in Canada. What happens when this fund strategy inevitably becomes the norm for the US market? It'll be massive. Plus, Bitcoiners hit the political circuit, lobbying against discrimination to the U.S. House of Representatives. A clip of former President Barack Obama resurfaces, where he outlines the value proposition of Bitcoin and the threat it poses to governments and central banks all across the world. Stick that Swiss bank account into your pocket, and let's get into this episode. Welcome to the Thursday, February 8th edition of the Bitcoin ETF Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. In this show, we discuss the latest news, events, winners, losers, and key information surrounding these historic Bitcoin ETFs. Here at Swan, we're on a mission to educate the world about Bitcoin. So do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the channel. That'll help us cut through the noise and extend our reach on YouTube, and also help to teach more and more people about Bitcoin. Bitcoiners woke up this morning to 45K and looked like this kid after seeing Charles Barkley at the Auburn game last night. Bitcoin surged over 45K as rising ETF inflows confirm accelerating investor interest. Flows were strong yesterday. We saw net inflows over $146 million. Fidelity was the clear winner with $130 million in inflows, beating BlackRock for just the sixth time out of the first 20 days since the ETFs launched. At this pace, will we see Fidelity cross the $3 billion in assets under management mark this week? We'll see it next week at the very latest. Speaking of Fidelity, they continue to go all in on Bitcoin, literally and figuratively. In their Canadian all-in-one ETF fund, they added options for a 1 to 3% Bitcoin exposure. With their conservative option, their Bitcoin ETF holding starts at 1% and scales up to over 3% for the more aggressive option. No knock on Canada. Sure, they have great hockey and incredible maple syrup, but they're not known for leading the world in terms of investable capital. That crown goes to the US. And if we want to go back to hockey, name one good Canadian hockey movie that's come out. We at least have The Mighty Ducks, and we have Miracle. Let's go back to Fidelity. In the US alone, they have over $4 trillion in assets under management. So just imagine what will happen when asset managers begin to add Bitcoin exposure to these all-in-one funds for their US customers. Everybody has incentive to do this. Last week, we mentioned that ARK started exiting their BITO position in favor of buying their own spot Bitcoin ETF in some of their other funds. Imagine what happens when BlackRock and Fidelity begin to do this to take the top Bitcoin ETF crown. The world isn't ready for the institutional FOMO that will happen when this next bull market comes around. With more and more funds plowing into these ETFs, are we starting to see a correlation between the price of Bitcoin and the inflows into these products? We'll have to wait and see. In other news, Bitcoiners hit the political circuit. In Missouri, they testified to the U.S. House of Representatives for fair and just treatment for digital asset businesses.
HB 2107 gives the great state of Missouri the ability to protect those who want to use Bitcoin and digital assets without fear of government overreach. It also ensures that the state can continue to benefit from the growth of Bitcoin mining. Last year alone, Bitcoin mining generated approximately 200 direct and indirect jobs and $3.5 million in tax revenue, predominantly in rural parts of the state. To be clear, HB 2107 does not ask for special privileges. It only requests that the state allow Bitcoin and digital asset businesses to grow without fear of discrimination.
One example Missouri regulators and utility operators should study, beyond ERCOT, which we've talked about on this show in the past, is the Tennessee Valley Authority. TVA is one of the largest electric utilities in the country. They serve customers from Tennessee all the way over to Virginia, down to Georgia, and all the way over to Mississippi. Their CEO, Jeff Lyash, has said that Bitcoin miners have had a pretty considerable economic impact on the region. They've been great to work with, and like we've said in the past, they provide stability to the grid. For our final segment of the day, it's time to zoom out and look at the macroeconomic environment. We've been looking at macroeconomic trends every day, internationally in China, all the way to what's happening here domestically in the US. And from the looks of things are looking pretty grim. Delinquencies are on the rise across the board in credit cards, auto, and in mortgage. Median home prices are contracting at levels that we haven't seen since 1964. Over 70% of the stocks in the S&P 500 underperformed in the index, marking the highest rate that we've seen this century. We're continuing to track the trend of layoffs, which so far this year, we have confirmed about 90,000 total layoffs. Just yesterday, we saw announced over 5,000 layoffs. And so you're telling me, despite all of this data and all of this information that we're seeing across the markets, we saw U.S. jobless claims go down for the first time this year? How is that possible? It's like two guys sitting in a booth at a diner with Apple VR headsets on. The reality we're being shown is different than the reality we're actually living in. Things like this go to highlight the growing distrust in our institutions and our governments. People don't have full faith in the credit of the United States government anymore. And the reality is, the clock is ticking. U.S. debt is growing faster than the public or the bank's ability to fund through U.S. treasuries. It seems that people are beginning to put more trust in rules, not rulers, in Bitcoin and not bonds. This chart here from Preston Pish says it all. This clip of former President Barack Obama is circling back around, highlighting the point that people are beginning to put their trust in encryption more so than government bodies and regulators.
The question we now have to ask is if technologically it is possible to make an impenetrable device or system where the encryption is so strong that there's no key, there's no door at all. What mechanisms do we have available to even do simple things like tax enforcement? Because if in fact you can't crack that at all, government can't get in, then everybody's walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket.
Bitcoin is removing government's ability to steal from its citizens through inflation and money printing. Like language and mathematics, Bitcoin's rules can be used, adopted, and understood by everyone globally. Bitcoin's game theory and monetary principles make it so that we all have a fair playing ground and we have a standard policy that we can all adhere to. Understandably, elected officials and governments all around the world are fearful of this sort of future and this sort of technology. But I'll ask you this: what leader, government, or country has ever gone wrong by doing what's best for the people that it serves? Like the Bitcoiners who went to testify in front of the U.S. House of Representatives earlier in our show, we have the opportunity to exercise our power with our voice, and we have the opportunity to exercise our power by exiting the system. Exit the system today with Bitcoin. And with that, we're signing off today. I'm Dante Cook with Swan.com. Happy stacking.
Don't you know I'm made up?